Okay, let's go over some draft lessons from yesterday. I think the first lesson is everyone's draft board is different. You're gonna have so many people collaborate on a board together. It's hard enough to collaborate with just two people, let alone however many scouts come together with the GM, with the assistant GM, and come together and decide on one single board that these are the best players in this order. That is a very, very hard thing to do. It takes a lot of collaboration. You have to be okay with a consensus big board that you may not agree with completely if you're on a team. So that's lesson number one. Everyone's board is different. All the teams have different boards. There's a lot of factors that go into that I want to talk about as well. Okay, lesson number two is what you hear in the media is not necessarily the truth. So Mike Dunleavy was asked about Brandon Podzinski being higher on their board than Cam Whitmore, to which he said that Brandon was higher on their big board. That's why they drafted him. But looking at the tape, I don't believe that is true. To me, Cam is a better player right now. He has an NBA ready body. The reason he fell must have been because of something else. And that goes back to lesson number one when I said that there's many, many factors of why you pick someone over another person. And some of those factors, besides the film, besides the way they play basketball, is the psychology of that player, how they do in the interviews, their medical history. All that stuff we don't have access to. So when I'm scouting a player, when I make my big board, it's just based on the film. It's just based on the talent. We underrate that psychology part and we underrate the medical part. Because we don't know, we just don't know, we don't have access to that information. So if Cam is a better player than Brandon, then why did Mike Dunleavy say that? I think that's a fair question, and my answer would be, he shouldn't be honest with us. He shouldn't be honest with us because it's unfair to Brandon and it's unfair to Cam. If Mike Dunleavy said we didn't pick him because he's not going to last long in the NBA, that just looks really bad. Cam is going to be pissed off. It's probably against the rules. And then you're implying that you would have picked Cam over Brandon, who you actually picked. It's just not the type of culture you want to bring in. It's wrong on so many fronts. So do I believe Mike Dunleavy when he says that Brandon was the best player on their board? No, I don't believe it. But do I believe that it was the right thing to do? Yes. I think Cam falling yesterday was the biggest story of the draft. I had him fourth in my big board. It's crazy that he fell to 20. I think it means two things. One, as I already mentioned, his medicals could be something there, I don't know. Two, teams are drafting more for fit, it seems like. Especially teams that want to compete. I believe the parity in the NBA is good because there's so many teams who want to compete now. You know, I believe you should draft players on fit if they are in the same tier. If the Dallas Mavericks believed that Derek Lively and Cam Whitmore were in the same tier, then go ahead and draft for Lively because he's clearly the better fit. My opinion is that you draft the higher tiered player if he's available. So I would have drafted Cam if I was Dallas. Not that they shouldn't be happy. A lot of teams, I think, went for fit more than they went for best player available. And again, that's okay. That's just what I'm observing. Okay, the fourth lesson I had today is draft picks are more valuable today than possibly ever before. And that's for a few reasons. One is because there's two-way contracts now. And the goal of that is to draft players, not give up on them so early, develop them, have them spend time in the G League, and then hopefully they contribute on your team later. Next, and maybe more importantly, is those draft pick salaries are pretty cheap and it's really hard to find good valued contracts. If you've hit on a draft pick, you've really saved a lot of money. An example of that is Denver, who they have to pay Jamal Murray, Porter, Jokic, Gordon. They want to keep that core, but it's going to cost them a lot of money. So what are they going to do? They have to go out and get these cheap contracts. They had 3 second rounders this year. So their goal is, let's hit on these draft picks and save us money in the long run. So let's talk about the winners of the draft. I don't want to do losers because, for example, I don't believe that Miami should have drafted Jaime Jaquez at 18, especially when Cam was available. I just don't trust Jaquez on defense. On offense, I think he's going to be solid. And I think he might prove me wrong. So I don't want to say that it was the wrong pick. Only time can tell about if it was the right pick or the wrong pick. But I don't want to do losers. I just want to focus on who I think did a really good job in the draft. I want to start off with Memphis. I was a big fan of GG Jackson. I knew most likely that he was going to fall to the second round. For Memphis to get him in the 40s, I think is an absolute steal. And they didn't have any other picks. That's all they had. I think it was an excellent pick. The Rockets obviously have talked about Cam a lot. I think absolute steal. Having Cam and Amen Thompson. I think they have a really solid core with Tari Eason, Cam, Amen, Jabari, Green of course. I just think their roster is set up for success. And then on top of that, they have all that cap room. I think what Dallas did was really good. Moved down in the draft. They took on Holmes' contract, who will probably play for them this year. And then they got Oliver Maxence Prosper by taking on Holmes' contract. I think overall they did a good job. So Charlotte, I think, had a good draft as well. I would have gone with Scoot Henderson, but I can't hate the Brandon Miller pick that much. I think he's going to be a stud and he could be better than Scoot. I think they're in the same tier, so I don't know why people are hating on that so much. But really getting Nick Smith at 27, that's a real steal. I think he's possibly better than Keontae George. In fact, he was higher on my big board than Keontae George. Keontae has more of an NBA ready body, but Smith to me is the better shooter and defender. They're in the same tier, so to get him that late in the draft, that late in the first round, that was really good. And Portland getting Chris Murray at 23, I think Chris Murray is going to be an NBA contributor from day one. The only other team I want to talk about is the Kings, because I think what they did was really interesting. I can't remember another time where a late first round pick was traded as a salary dump. In a deep draft, it was kind of surprising. If you told me the Kings got Colby Jones and Slauson, I would have been like, okay, they spent the 24th pick on Colby Jones, and they probably got Slauson with the pick they had in the 50s. When you're looking at it from that perspective, I think what the Kings got was good value. Now, that's one perspective. The other perspective is there were really good players left at 24, including Nick Smith Jr., and they could have picked him. Instead, they used it to get rid of Holmes' contract. In a vacuum, that looks really bad. It is unfair to judge the Kings based solely on that. You have to judge what the Kings did after free agency, after the dust settles. Because if they get a player like Kuzma, you could say that it was worth it. If they can't hit on free agency, then what they did looks a lot worse. So it seems like they're confident in getting a good free agent, or maybe they're just going to re-sign Barnes. And I think a lot of eyes are going to be focused on what they do in free agency now. Anyways, these were my winners and the few lessons I took away from the draft. Thanks for watching. Peace.